Chapter 1. The Invisible Revolution in the Skies, March 15, 1943. Lieutenant Colonel Don Blakesley adjusted his oxygen mask as his P-51B Mustang climbed through 28,000 feet over occupied France. Below, the industrial complex of Le Bourget stretched across the landscape like a grey scar, its aircraft factories pumping out Messerschmitt fighters that had been terrorizing Allied bomber formations for months. What Blakesley didn't realize was that the amber liquid flowing through his fuel lines represented the most significant technological breakthrough of the entire air war. The morning briefing had been routine, escort duty for B-17 flying fortresses targeting German aircraft production. But this mission was different. For the first time, Blakesley's Mustang carried experimental 150-grade aviation fuel, a chemical formulation so advanced that even its existence was classified above top secret. The fuel had arrived at his Essex airfield just 72 hours earlier, transported in unmarked tanker trucks under armed guard. Colonel Cass Hauff, the 8th Air Force's chief engineering officer, had personally supervised the refueling operation. His instructions were explicit: test the fuel's performance under combat conditions, document any changes in aircraft behavior, and report directly to Washington. What he didn't tell the pilots was that this single chemical innovation might determine whether the Allies could achieve air superiority over Nazi Germany. If you're fascinated by how science changed the course of World War II, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Like this video if you want to discover more untold stories of technological breakthroughs that shaped history. Share with fellow aviation enthusiasts who appreciate the engineering marvels that won the war. The science behind 150-octane fuel represented a quantum leap in petroleum chemistry. Traditional aviation gasoline contained tetraethyl lead additives that prevented engine knock, but the new formulation incorporated complex aromatic hydrocarbons and advanced anti-detonation compounds that allowed engines to operate at compression ratios previously considered impossible. This wasn't merely an incremental improvement, it was a complete reimagining of how aircraft engines could extract power from fossil fuels. As Blakesley's formation approached the target area, German radar stations began tracking their approach. Within minutes, contrails appeared high above, as Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt Bf 109Gs dove to intercept. The battle that followed would provide the first operational proof that American petroleum engineers had fundamentally altered the balance of power in European skies. But this story extends far beyond a single combat mission. It's the tale of how a desperately innovative industrial effort, conducted under wartime pressure in refineries across Texas and Louisiana, created a weapon more decisive than any bomb or bullet. The 150-grade fuel program represented the intersection of chemistry, engineering, and strategic necessity, a convergence that would ultimately determine whether Nazi Germany could maintain its aerial fortress over occupied Europe. The stakes were absolute. Control of the skies meant control of the war itself. Chapter 2. Crisis in the Petroleum Laboratories, September 1942. Dr. Graham Edgar hunched over his desk at the Ethyl Corporation's research facility in Detroit, surrounded by spectroscopic analysis charts that told a disturbing story. Allied fighter aircraft were being systematically outperformed by German interceptors at altitudes above 25,000 feet, where the thin air revealed fundamental limitations in existing fuel technology. The problem was brutally technical. At high altitudes, reduced atmospheric pressure caused conventional 100-octane aviation fuel to behave unpredictably in aircraft engines. Pilots reported sudden power losses during critical combat maneuvers, engine roughness that prevented sustained high-power operation, and catastrophic detonation failures that destroyed entire power plants in seconds. Edgar's team faced a seemingly impossible challenge: develop a fuel formulation that would allow Allied aircraft engines to produce significantly more power while operating reliably at extreme altitudes. The chemistry involved was staggeringly complex, requiring precise balance of aromatic compounds, aliphatic hydrocarbons, and metallic additives that had never been combined in operational quantities. Working 18-hour shifts, Petroleum chemists at Standard Oil, Shell, and Texaco began experimenting with fuel compositions that pushed the boundaries of known science. Dr. Robert Ray at Standard Oil's Bayway refinery documented their breakthrough. By increasing the concentration of isooctane to 65%, while adding carefully measured quantities of cumene and tryptane, we achieved anti-knock characteristics that exceeded our theoretical predictions. The manufacturing challenges were equally daunting. Producing 150-grade fuel required complete retooling of refinery distillation columns, installing specialized catalytic cracking units, and implementing quality control procedures far more rigorous than anything attempted during peacetime. Every component had to meet specifications measured in parts per million. Deviations that seemed insignificant could mean the difference between engine reliability and catastrophic failure. Captain James Goodson, a Spitfire pilot who participated in early fuel trials, later described the transformation. The difference was immediately apparent during takeoff. Where we previously struggled to maintain climb rate above 20,000 feet, the aircraft now pulled strongly through 30,000. It felt like flying a completely different machine. But the real test would come during actual combat operations, where the fuel's performance would be measured not in laboratory specifications, but in the life-and-death struggles playing out daily over German-occupied territory. Meanwhile, German intelligence services remained completely unaware that their technological advantage in high-altitude combat was about to evaporate. Chapter 3. Engineering Victory Through Chemistry. April 7, 1943. Major Robert Johnson powered his P-47D Thunderbolt through a vertical climb over the Rhine Valley, pursuing a formation of Messerschmitt Bf-109G fighters that had just attacked a group of B-24 Liberators. For the first time in his combat career, Johnson's aircraft maintained full power throughout the climb, its engine producing nearly 2,000 horsepower at an altitude where German fighters typically held decisive advantages. The technical specifications were remarkable. Where standard 100-octane fuel limited the Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine to approximately 1,600 horsepower maximum output, the new 150-grade formulation allowed sustained operation at 1,850 horsepower, a 15.6% increase that translated directly into superior climb rate, higher top speed, and dramatically improved acceleration characteristics. Johnson's after-action report documented the fuel's impact with scientific precision. Maintained full combat power from takeoff through 32,000 feet, without engine roughness or detonation. Successfully intercepted enemy aircraft that would have escaped using previous fuel formulations. No mechanical failures or performance degradation observed during 4.2-hour mission duration. The chemistry enabling this performance breakthrough centered on the fuel's enhanced anti-knock characteristics. Traditional aviation gasoline began experiencing pre-ignition at compression ratios above 6.5.1, limiting engine designers to relatively conservative power outputs. The 150-grade fuel's complex molecular structure prevented detonation at compression ratios approaching 8.1, allowing engines to extract significantly more energy from each combustion cycle. Squadron leader Johnny Johnson of the Royal Air Force provided additional confirmation during trials with Spitfire 9 aircraft. The improvement in high-altitude performance exceeded our most optimistic projections. Aircraft that previously lost power above 25,000 feet now maintained full combat capability through 35,000 feet. This altitude advantage proved decisive during intercept missions against German reconnaissance aircraft. German technical intelligence, meanwhile, struggled to explain the sudden improvement in Allied fighter performance. Captured Luftwaffe documents from this period reveal growing concern about American aircraft that seemed to exceed their published specifications by substantial margins. Oberst Adolf Galland, commanding the German fighter forces, reported to Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, "Enemy fighters demonstrate performance characteristics inconsistent with our technical assessments. Recommend immediate investigation of possible modifications to American aircraft engines or fuel systems." The investigation would prove futile. German petroleum technology remained focused on synthetic fuel production to compensate for limited crude oil reserves, leaving them unable to replicate the advanced chemical formulations being mass-produced in American refineries. Chapter 4. The alternative timeline that haunts history. But what if the 150-octane fuel program had failed? What if the technical challenges had proved insurmountable or industrial accidents had prevented mass production? The alternative scenario reveals how narrowly the Allies avoided potential disaster. Consider the strategic situation in early 1943. German fighter production had reached peak efficiency, with monthly output exceeding 1,200 aircraft. The Focke-Wulf 190A4 and Messerschmitt Bf 109G6 represented the pinnacle of conventional fighter design, incorporating lessons learned from 3 years of intensive combat. Without their fuel advantage, Allied fighters would have remained marginally competitive at best. Dr. Richard Muller's post-war analysis for the Strategic Bombing Survey painted a grim picture. Removing the performance advantage provided by 150-grade fuel would have extended the air war by an estimated 12 to 18 months. German fighter defenses would have remained effective through mid-1945, preventing the systematic destruction of industrial targets that ultimately collapsed the Nazi war economy. The mathematical implications are sobering. During the actual air battles of 1943-1944, Allied fighters achieved approximately 4:1 kill ratios against German interceptors. Without high-octane fuel, intelligence estimates suggest these ratios would have reversed to favor German pilots, who possessed superior training and combat experience. From 4 years of continuous warfare, Operation Overlord, the D-Day invasion, required absolute Allied air superiority over the Norman beaches. Planning documents reveal that invasion planners considered acceptable casualty rates only if German fighter intervention could be limited to fewer than 50 sorties per day. Without fuel-enhanced Allied fighters, German Air Force strength might have remained sufficient to mount 200-300 daily sorties against the invasion fleet. The technological ripple effects extend even further. Extended air warfare would have accelerated German development of revolutionary weapons systems, including operational jet fighters, guided missiles, and advanced radar-controlled anti-aircraft systems. The Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighter program, historically delayed by strategic bombing of production facilities, might have reached full operational status by late 1944. Captain Eric Brown, the Royal Navy's chief test pilot, evaluated captured German aircraft after the war. The Me-262 represented a generational leap beyond conventional fighters. Had the Germans achieved squadron-strength deployment by 1944, Allied air superiority would have been seriously challenged regardless of fuel improvements. Perhaps most critically, pilot attrition rates would have consumed Allied aircrew reserves at unsustainable levels, creating experience gaps that required years to remedy. Chapter 5. Liquid Victory and the Science of Air Supremacy. By December 1944, the transformation was complete. Allied fighter squadrons equipped with 150-octane fuel had achieved such overwhelming performance superiority that German Air Force commanders issued standing orders to avoid engagement unless holding significant tactical advantages. The chemical breakthrough had effectively ended the Luftwaffe as an offensive force. The statistical evidence was overwhelming. During Operation Bodenplatte, the German Air Force's final major offensive on January 1, 1945, Allied fighters destroyed 300 German aircraft while losing only 26 of their own, a kill ratio exceeding 11.1. Major George Preddy, flying his P-51D Krieps a Mighty Third, achieved 6 victories in a single mission, later commenting, "The sustained power available at all altitudes made pursuit and engagement possible under conditions where we previously would have been forced to disengage." Technical analysis revealed the fuel's decisive impact on engine performance parameters. At 30,000 feet, where German fighters historically held advantages, Allied aircraft now produced 23% more horsepower than their opponents. This power differential translated into climb rates averaging 500 feet per minute, faster than comparable German aircraft, top speeds 15 to 20 mph higher, and acceleration characteristics that made disengagement from combat nearly impossible for enemy pilots. Colonel Hub Zemke, commanding the 56th Fighter Group, documented the strategic implications. The fuel advantage fundamentally altered tactical doctrine. Where defensive formations had been necessary to protect bombers, we now conducted aggressive fighter sweeps deep into German airspace, seeking combat rather than avoiding it. German archives captured after the war revealed the psychological impact on Luftwaffe personnel. Pilot reports from late 1944 consistently described Allied fighters as impossibly fast and capable of sustained high-altitude performance that defies technical explanation. Luftwaffe training manuals were rewritten to emphasize avoidance of engagement rather than aggressive interception tactics. The industrial achievement was equally remarkable. American refineries produced over 2.3 billion gallons of 150-grade aviation fuel between 1943 and 1945, requiring coordination between dozens of petroleum companies, thousands of chemical engineers, and an entirely new supply chain stretching from Texas oil fields to English airfields. This technological triumph extended far beyond wartime applications. The chemical engineering techniques developed for high-octane fuel production laid foundations for post-war advances in petrochemicals, plastics, and eventually rocket propellants for the space program. Today, examining the declassified records of this remarkable industrial effort, we can see how American petroleum engineers created victory through pure chemistry, transforming crude oil into liquid air superiority that decided the fate of nations.